If you're a parent, you know there's no worse feeling than seeing something wrong with your child and having no idea what caused it. And when that feeling collides with a suspicion that the person you love most, the person you trust with your child's life, might be hiding something, well, that's when everything in your world starts to unravel. I want you to imagine this. You come home from work a little later than usual. You're tired, but relieved. It's Friday, you're ready for the weekend, and all you want is to kiss your daughter goodnight and maybe pour yourself a drink. You walk in, expecting the normal sounds of bedtime. Maybe giggles, maybe story time. But instead, you find silence. Stillness. A kind of heavy quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels wrong. You call out for your wife. No answer. You move through your home like it suddenly belongs to someone else. And then you find your daughter. But something's off. Her eyes, they don't meet yours the way they used to. Her voice, flat, distant, like she's somewhere else. She flinches when you touch her shoulder. And from that exact moment, your life splits in two. Everything before that night and everything after. What happened while I was gone? That question haunted me for months. And today, I'm going to tell you everything. I promise by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what happened. But trust me when I say, you'll wish you didn't. Hey, I know you probably clicked this video because something about the title felt too real. Maybe you felt that pit in your stomach too, the one that whispers something's wrong, even when everyone says it's fine. Maybe you're a parent, maybe you're married, or maybe you just know what it feels like to trust someone completely and then question everything. Stick with me, because this isn't just a story about what happened in my home. This is a story about what happens when we stop listening to our instincts. When we look away from the cracks in our lives because it's easier to pretend they're not there. But some truths refuse to stay buried. Some things your brain tries to forget, but your heart won't let go. And if you've ever wondered how one normal evening can become the moment that shatters everything you thought was real, you're in the right place. My name's James, and before all this happened, we were just an average family. I worked in IT, mostly from home. My wife, Lauren, was a stay-at-home mom for the first few years of our daughter's life, but she'd recently started taking babysitting jobs in the neighborhood. Just a few hours here and there to bring in extra money, and let's be honest, get a break from full-time parenting. Our daughter, Emily, was 6. Bright, curious, a little too talkative for her teacher's liking, but that's how kids are, right? She loved animals, especially horses, even though we didn't live anywhere near a stable. She had this laugh, God, I still hear it sometimes, that started in her chest and came out like bells. That laugh could melt your worst day into nothing. But after that night, I didn't hear it again for a long, long time. Let me take you back to where it all started. It was a Saturday in late October. The leaves were turning, Halloween decorations were going up, and Emily was counting down the days to trick-or-treating. That day, Lauren had agreed to babysit a little boy a few blocks away. I had an out-of-town tech install, last-minute, high-priority client stuff, and I'd be gone most of the day. Lauren said she'd take Emily with her, that the boy loved having her around, and they'd make a whole playdate out of it. Sounded fine to me. It wasn't unusual. Emily loved going with her mom, and Lauren was great with kids. She always knew how to calm them down, entertain them, even get the shy ones to open up. There was never any reason not to trust her. Until that night. When I came home around 8:15, the house was already dark. I assumed they were still at the babysitting house, maybe having dinner there. I texted Lauren, no answer. Called. Went to voicemail. I didn't panic. Not yet. Maybe her phone had died. Maybe Emily fell asleep and she didn't want to wake her. That's the kind of mom Lauren was, thoughtful, careful. But then around 8:40, the front door opened. I heard the creak of it from the living room and turned, expecting to see Lauren and Emily with grocery bags or craft supplies or whatever they'd picked up that day. But it was just Lauren, alone. And she looked strange. Pale, like she'd been crying but wiped it away fast. Her voice when she greeted me was calm, too calm. Asked where Emily was. She's upstairs already in bed, she said. Big day. She was exhausted. Something in her tone made the hairs on my neck stand up. It was subtle, but I've been married long enough to know when my wife's lying. or hiding something. I went upstairs slow, pushed open Emily's door, and found her curled in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling like she was waiting for something, or afraid of something. I sat down beside her. Her tiny body flinched. Not visibly, but I felt it, like every muscle in her back tightened just slightly. I said her name. She didn't answer, just looked at me with those huge, blank eyes that used to sparkle like stars. And then, in a voice I barely recognized, she whispered, "Can I sleep with the lights on tonight?" That's when I knew. Something happened. Something real. Something bad. Look, I'm not here to jump to wild theories. I'm not here to sensationalize. But when you know your child, you know when something inside them has changed. Emily wasn't scared of the dark. Never had been. She used to insist the hallway light be turned off because it ruined the moonlight through her window. But now, she was afraid. Afraid in that primal, wordless way kids get when something they don't understand has happened to them. I wanted to ask her more, but she just closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. And something inside me broke that night. In the days that followed, things didn't get better. Emily wouldn't talk about what happened. She wouldn't even say she had fun. She didn't draw, didn't laugh, barely ate. She was there, but she wasn't. And Lauren? She just kept saying everything was fine. That kids go through phases. That maybe she was just overtired. But she wouldn't look me in the eye when she said it. Wouldn't talk about that babysitting job or what they did that day. No pictures. No cute stories. Just silence. And I started to wonder, what really happened in those hours when I wasn't there? Here's the thing. When someone you trust gives you the feeling that they're hiding something, your brain tries to protect you. It says, you're imagining it. It says, she'd never do anything to hurt Emily. It says, you're being paranoid. But your gut whispers the truth. And I couldn't shake the feeling that my wife, the person I built my life around, was lying. And that our daughter had seen something, heard something, maybe even been part of something that a 6-year-old should never be near. I tried everything. I talked to her teachers, asked our neighbors if they saw anything strange that day, even called the parents of the boy Lauren was babysitting. But they weren't home that day. Hadn't asked her to babysit. Said they were out of town all weekend. That was the first real crack. And once I started looking, the cracks turned into chasms. There was no babysitting job. Lauren had taken Emily somewhere else that day. Somewhere she refused to talk about. And whatever happened there, it changed our daughter. This is where the story starts to unravel. And where the lies begin to surface. In the next part, I'll tell you what I found hidden in our garage. What Emily said in her sleep one night that still gives me chills. And why the police eventually got involved. But for now, I need you to sit with this question. The one that kept me up every night for weeks. If the person you love most is lying to you, would you even know it? The days that followed were slow, heavy, and somehow louder in their silence than anything I'd ever known. I'd lie in bed next to Lauren, the same woman I'd fallen in love with 10 years ago, and wonder who I was really sleeping next to. I'd watch Emily eat her cereal without a word, spoon paused halfway to her mouth as if she'd forgotten what she was doing, and wonder where her mind had gone. It was like something in our house had shifted, like an invisible fog had crept in through the cracks and settled in the corners of every room. Our routines stayed the same, school drop-offs, laundry, dinner, but nothing felt normal. I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The way Lauren double-checked the locks even in broad daylight. The way Emily winced at sudden noises or refused to go into certain rooms alone. And the way Lauren watched Emily when she thought I wasn't looking, her eyes not just worried but haunted. I spent most of my days obsessing over the timeline. That Saturday Lauren said she'd gone to the Ryans' place to babysit. She even packed Emily's backpack with snacks and her sketch pad like she always did. But after I called the Ryans and they told me they'd been in Vermont the whole weekend, the entire foundation of her story collapsed. Lauren had lied. That much was undeniable. But the question was, why? And where had she actually taken our daughter? The lie felt too specific, too rehearsed. She hadn't panicked when I asked. She'd been prepared. That's what scared me the most. Not that she had lied, but how smoothly she had done it. I tried to confront her that night, gently at first. I asked why she said she was babysitting when the Ryans were out of town. She didn't answer, just stared at me, expressionless, and then said, "You're tired, James. You're overthinking things again." That again stung. A few months back, I'd gone through a rough period, work stress, some insomnia, and I'd gotten a little obsessive about neighborhood security after a string of local break-ins. Maybe I overreacted, I admit that. I installed cameras, motion lights, even a backyard alarm. Lauren had been patient at first, but I could tell she started to resent how I always thought the worst was about to happen. So when she pulled that again on me, I knew she was using it against me now, turning my own anxiety into a weapon to shut me up. That's when I knew something was deeply wrong, because Lauren used to calm my fears, not feed them. And then, almost as if the universe was daring me to keep digging, I found something. It was Tuesday night. Lauren had gone to bed early, said she had a headache. I was in the garage looking for an old photo album, thinking maybe if I showed Emily some happy memories it would jog her out of whatever trance she'd fallen into. I moved a few storage bins out of the way, and that's when I noticed it. An unfamiliar plastic bag tucked behind a stack of gardening tools. Inside it was a small canvas pouch I didn't recognize. It looked handmade, stitched with symbols I couldn't make sense of, something between flowers and stars. Inside the pouch was a bundle of what I can only describe as ritual items, tiny feathers, a clump of dried herbs, what looked like salt crystals, and, God help me, a child's tooth wrapped in red thread. It wasn't Emily's. She hadn't lost any more baby teeth in months, and this one looked old, brittle. There was something primal in that moment, like my body knew before my mind did that I was holding something that didn't belong in our home. Something that shouldn't have been there. I didn't confront Lauren about it right away. I needed to be sure I wasn't spiraling again. I started doing what any suspicious husband would. I dug deeper. Checked our browser history. Nothing. She'd cleared it. I looked through her phone when she was in the shower. No suspicious texts, no strange numbers. But her Notes app had been recently wiped blank. That was odd. Lauren had always used it like a second brain. Grocery lists, reminders, quotes she liked. Now it was empty. And just when I was starting to feel crazy again, something else happened. Emily spoke. It was just after midnight. I couldn't sleep, so I was sitting on the couch watching security footage from the weekend. Another desperate attempt to find something, anything, that might explain what happened. Emily walked into the living room, her pajamas rumpled, her face pale. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. I paused the footage and asked if she was okay. She nodded. Then, in that same quiet voice, she whispered, "Why did Mommy take me to the red house?" I froze. "What red house?" I asked gently. She shook her head, tears already forming, and said, "I wasn't supposed to tell." I wrapped my arms around her, and she buried her face in my chest. And even though I wanted to push, to ask more, I didn't. I knew from the look in her eyes that whatever happened at that red house was locked deep inside her, and if I pushed too hard, I might lose her altogether. From that moment on, everything I did was about finding that house. The next day, I drove through every street in our neighborhood, and then through the next. I looked for anything that matched what she said. Red paint, a porch swing, a wind chime, anything. I asked our neighbors if Lauren had mentioned going somewhere unusual that day, but everyone said no. One woman, though, Mrs. Dunlap, 2 doors down, said something strange. She told me Lauren had stopped by her yard sale that Saturday afternoon alone. No Emily. She'd bought a glass jar and a stack of old children's books. Looked like she was in a hurry, Mrs. Dunlap said. Didn't stay to chat like she usually does. That was another crack in a lie. Lauren had told me Emily had been with her all day. So where had she been during that time? I started to feel like I was living 2 lives. The version I showed Lauren, the calm, concerned husband trying to give space, and the version I was becoming in secret, the man digging into his wife's life, retracing her steps, watching her every move through hidden lenses. I even considered hiring a private investigator, but there was no way to do that without leaving a trail. So I kept watching, waiting, hoping she'd slip. And she did. A week later. It was a Thursday evening. I told Lauren I had a late meeting downtown. Instead, I parked a few blocks away and waited. Just after 6, she left the house with a bag and drove east, away from the school, away from town. I followed at a distance, trying to breathe normally, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. She drove past the city limits into the older part of town, where the houses were smaller, some boarded up, where the streetlights flickered like they were dying. And then, finally, she pulled into the driveway of a small, one-story red house. My heart dropped. There it was. She didn't knock. She had a key. I didn't recognize the house. It wasn't on any realtor site. No name on the mailbox, just an old brass number on the peeling door. She was inside for about 20 minutes. When she came out, she looked different, like someone had drained her of color. I stayed hidden, breath shallow, until she drove off. Then I approached the house, carefully, listening for any sound. But it was dead silent. I didn't try to go in, not yet. I wasn't ready. But I took pictures. Of the door, the windows, the weird symbol etched into the wood above the doorframe. And when I got home, I started researching. Local records, property history, code violations. Anything that might tell me who owned that house and what Lauren was doing there. That's when the other names started coming up. And, with them, other missing children. But we'll get to that. Because before I could put the pieces together, something happened in our own backyard. And it made me realize this wasn't just about lies. It was about something much darker. Something that had already taken root in our family and was now beginning to grow. I didn't sleep much after finding that red house. My mind wouldn't shut off, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face the night she asked to sleep with the lights on. I kept hearing her voice, soft, scared, asking about the red house like it was something out of a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The next morning, I dropped Emily off at school early and told Lauren I needed to run errands. She barely looked up from her coffee, just nodded like everything was normal. I took that as a sign. She thought I wasn't suspicious anymore. That gave me just enough room to keep digging. I drove straight to the red house. This time, I parked closer. The neighborhood looked even worse in daylight. Most of the houses had boarded windows, rusted fences, yards overgrown with weeds. The red house had no curtains, no visible lights inside, but the door was locked. I circled the property, looking for another way in. That's when I saw the camera, small, mounted just under the eaves of the roof, angled toward the backyard. It wasn't wired. It was modern, wireless, motion-triggered. Someone was still watching this place. I backed off, my nerves rattled, but I wasn't ready to give up. I'd taken photos of everything, door symbols, mailbox, the porch with the warped wood steps, and stored them on a USB drive I kept hidden in my tool chest. That night, I copied the files onto my laptop to organize and label everything. But when I opened the folder, something was wrong. Half the photos were missing. The time-stamped ones of Lauren entering the house. Gone. Even the porch shot, which I'd taken twice from 2 different angles, it was as if they had been erased without touching the folder. I checked my drive. Blank. Not corrupted. Wiped. At first I thought maybe I'd made a mistake. Maybe I hadn't saved everything properly. But then I noticed something even more disturbing. My Wi-Fi router log showed a remote access event from an unfamiliar IP just a day earlier. Someone had gotten into my system. Someone didn't want me keeping those pictures. The next morning, a letter arrived. Not a typed one. Handwritten, folded neatly in a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single line. Stop digging, or she won't come back the same next time. No signature. No name. Just that sentence in sharp, slanted handwriting that chilled me to the bone. The message didn't say who she was, but I knew. Emily. They were watching. They knew I was getting closer, and now they were warning me. I wanted to go to the police. I almost did. But what could I show them? A missing set of photos, a red house that might not even be listed on any public records, and a bag of weird objects I'd already touched without gloves? All it would take is Lauren denying everything, calling it another one of my paranoid episodes, and suddenly I'd be the one under scrutiny. That's how it works, right? The ones who start asking questions always look crazy first. I needed help, but I couldn't go to someone official. So I reached out to the only person I thought might believe me, my sister, Claire. She used to live nearby, but had moved across the state a couple years ago after a bad divorce. Claire's always been sharp, practical, the kind of person who doesn't get spooked easily. When we were kids, she was the one who always saw through people's masks before I even knew they were wearing one. She drove up the next morning after I told her something was wrong with Lauren and that Emily might be in danger. I didn't give details over the phone. I wanted to explain everything in person. But when she got to the house, her reaction was strange. I met her outside, before she came in, and started laying everything out. Emily's change in behavior, the red house, the missing pictures, the warning note. Claire didn't interrupt. She just listened, nodding slowly, her face unreadable. When I showed her the canvas pouch and the strange items inside, she froze. She didn't touch them, just stared and then quietly asked, "Where did you find this?" I told her, garage, hidden behind gardening tools. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she told me something I never expected to hear. "I've seen one of these before," she whispered. "Years ago, when I was still married to Adam. He had an Aunt Celia who used to talk about protection rituals, old Appalachian stuff, spiritual wards. I always thought it was just folklore. But once, at a family gathering, she showed me a pouch just like this one. Said it was for binding, for keeping something from returning. She made me promise never to tell anyone I saw it." Claire looked at me, her face pale. "James, this isn't just a weird hobby. This is old. And whoever made it knew what they were doing." I felt the floor shift beneath me. Binding? Keeping something from returning? What the hell had Lauren gotten into? I asked Claire if she thought it was witchcraft, some kind of cult. She hesitated. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it's not harmless." We brought the pouch inside. Lauren was out with Emily at the time, at least that's what she said, and I wanted Claire to see the house. See what I'd been seeing. She walked through each room like she was searching for something invisible. When she got to the guest room, the one we hadn't used in months, she stopped. Her eyes narrowed. "What's that smell?" she asked. I hadn't noticed anything before, but now I smelled it too. Faint, like burned sage or incense, but underneath something metallic. I opened the closet, and there, in the back corner, was a charred circle on the floor. Blackened, with ash scattered like someone had tried to sweep it up in a hurry. Claire stepped back, her voice low. She did something here. A ritual. Recently. I had no words. Just questions. So many questions. When Lauren got home that evening, everything felt different. Like she could sense we were on to her. She didn't look surprised to see Claire, just smiled and said it was nice to catch up. But her eyes were cold. Watching. Calculating. That night, after we put Emily to bed, Lauren came into our room and said something that sent chills down my spine. "You shouldn't have brought her here." She didn't say Claire's name. Just her. And the way she said it, it wasn't anger. It was fear. Later that night, Claire told me she was going to drive out to that red house the next morning alone. She said she needed to see it for herself. I told her it wasn't safe. That we didn't know who was behind that door or what they were capable of. But she insisted. Said she had a contact in state records who might be able to trace the property's ownership. Said maybe we were finally close to answers. She never made it to the house. At least not that I know of. Because the next morning she was gone. Her car was still in our driveway. Her bag, her phone, her jacket. All still in the guest room. But she was nowhere to be found. And the front door? It was wide open. The hours after Claire disappeared were among the most surreal of my life. There was no trace of her, no note, no text, not even a missed call. I checked the security cameras first, hoping they had caught something, anything. But somewhere between 3 and 5 a.m., the entire system had glitched. Just a 2-hour black gap with no explanation. It was the same kind of interference I'd seen on the footage from the red house, the same strange, deliberate absence. That's when I knew this wasn't random. Someone had taken her. or convinced her to leave under pressure. And whoever it was had access, not just to our home, but to our lives. Claire's phone, still sitting on the nightstand, lit up around 7:13 a.m. with a single notification from an unknown sender. The preview simply read, "You've seen enough." When I tried to unlock the phone, it restarted. When it came back on, all messages were gone. The call log, too. Whatever they were doing, they were covering every track. I didn't go to the police. I wanted to. I even picked up the phone twice. But the fear that any move I made would put Emily in more danger kept my hands frozen. Lauren acted completely unfazed by Claire's absence. When I asked if she'd seen her that morning, she shrugged and said, "Maybe she went for a walk." No alarm, no confusion, no surprise. Just a thinly veiled indifference that made my stomach twist. And then, just when I thought things couldn't spiral any further, someone else got involved, someone I never expected. 2 days after Claire vanished, I got a call from my former boss, Rick. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year, not since I left the firm to work freelance. He said he needed to meet in person. Urgent. I drove out to a diner halfway between our neighborhoods. When I walked in, Rick was already there, nursing a cold coffee, eyes darting to the door every few seconds. As soon as I sat down, he slid a manila envelope across the table. "I didn't know who else to give this to," he said. "I didn't want to get involved, but you need to see it." Inside the envelope were photographs. Grainy, time-stamped, surveillance style. Some of them were of Lauren. But not just at home, at places I'd never seen before. A rundown convenience store off Route 8. A wooded trailhead nearly 2 towns away. One image showed her speaking to a man in a gray coat with his back to the camera. But the one that truly unsettled me was the last photo. It was of me, sitting in my car, watching the red house. Someone had been watching me watch her. Asked Rick where he got the envelope. He said it had been left in his office mailbox. No name, no explanation, just the message, "He's next." He looked at me and said, "I don't know what kind of mess you're in, man, but this is organized. It's bigger than one person lying to their spouse. You need to be careful." That night, I confronted Lauren again. I showed her one of the photos, just one. Her standing at the trailhead, holding something wrapped in cloth. I didn't say where I got it. I just asked, "What were you doing here?" She stared at it for a long time. Then she smiled. Not with warmth, but with a kind of cold detachment that sent a shiver up my spine. "I've been protecting us," she said. "You keep pulling on threads you don't understand." And with that, she walked away like the conversation never happened. Then came the second letter. This time it wasn't left in our mailbox. It was slid under the door of Emily's classroom at school. The teacher, Miss Temple, called me in for a private meeting. She looked shaken. Said she found it tucked between the cubbies before school started. Just like before, plain white envelope. No handwriting on the outside. But inside was a single sheet of lined paper, torn at the edge. The message read, "The child is remembering. Stop her." Miss Temple, of course, had no idea what it meant. She assumed it was some sick prank, maybe from another student. But I knew exactly what it meant. Someone was watching Emily. Someone knew she was starting to piece things together, even in ways she couldn't explain. That same afternoon, she came home with a drawing in her backpack. Crayon and paper, normal for a 6-year-old. But when I unfolded it, my blood ran cold. She had drawn our family, Lauren, me, and herself, but standing beside us was a fourth figure. Tall. Faceless. Just an outline, filled in with solid black. No eyes, no mouth. Just a silhouette looming over us. And in her uneven scrawl, she had written, "He comes when Mommy says the words." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about what Lauren had done. It was about what she had invited in. The more I thought about the pouch, the ritual mark in the guest room, and the words Claire had said, binding, protection, keeping something from returning, the more it felt like Lauren hadn't just been lying. She had been playing with something ancient, something beyond her control. And now it was near our daughter. Or inside her world. Maybe inside her mind. Maybe more. But even then there were pieces that didn't line up. I kept coming back to that man in the gray coat, the one from the photo at the trailhead. He was the only constant in multiple shots. Always at a distance. Always partially obscured. I started showing his blurred image around town, at gas stations, small shops, even a post office downtown. Most people didn't recognize him. But one guy did, a maintenance worker at a cemetery near the outskirts. Said he'd seen someone matching that description multiple times over the past few months. Always came late. Never stayed long. Just stood near one of the older graves and left. Said he thought it was a grieving father or something. I asked if he remembered the grave. He led me there himself. It was the grave of a woman named Celia Rourke. The same name Claire had mentioned, the aunt of her ex-husband. The one who made the binding pouch. The one who had warned her never to speak of it. Except Celia had died nearly 6 years ago. Which raised a terrifying question. Who's the man at her grave? Why was Lauren meeting him? And what did any of this have to do with Emily? I stood there staring at the tombstone, chilled by the thought that the woman who may have been the last line of defense against whatever Lauren was invoking was already long gone. And the person who had taken her place, if that's what he was, had been watching me this entire time. Then, just as I turned to leave, I saw something new, something that hadn't been there when I arrived. Sitting on top of Celia's grave was a photograph of Claire, standing in front of the red house, looking directly at the camera. But the photo was dated 2 days after she went missing. I stared at the photograph on the grave for what felt like hours, my hands trembling, my pulse a steady throb in my ears. Claire was standing in front of the red house, no question about it. Same clothes she'd worn the night before she vanished, same shadows stretching across the cracked porch beneath her feet. But it was the date that clawed at the back of my mind. 2 days after she disappeared. Meaning whoever took this photo knew exactly where she was. Knew how to find her. And now they were playing with me, leaving it here like some twisted breadcrumb. That was no coincidence. That was a message. I was being watched, tracked, not just from a distance but close enough to anticipate my movements. It was like they already knew I'd end up at Celia Rourke's grave, and they wanted me to find the photo. As I slowly reached for it, a sudden cold breeze swept through the cemetery, sharp enough to sting my eyes. I looked up, scanning the empty tree line behind me. Nothing. No movement. No sound. But I felt it, like eyes pressing down on me from a place just outside of sight. I pocketed the photo and left without looking back. That night, something shifted. I felt it the moment I stepped through the door. Lauren was already sitting in the living room. Lights dimmed, no TV, no book, just sitting, her hands clasped in her lap like she was waiting for something. She didn't speak when I came in, just tracked me with her eyes. I didn't say anything either. I couldn't. Not yet. Not without knowing how much she already knew. Emily was upstairs, or at least I hoped she was. But I didn't check. Something told me not to move too fast. Not to break the stillness, just yet. After a few long, suffocating minutes, Lauren finally said, "You're spiraling again." That was it. Just that one sentence, cool and measured. But it wasn't concern in her voice. It was disappointment. Or maybe contempt. I told her I needed to get some air, and left before she could say anything else. I drove without a destination, hands clutching the wheel like it was the only thing grounding me. My thoughts were racing. Claire was alive, or had been alive. 2 days after she vanished. That meant someone had her, was keeping her, maybe even using her. But why? And for what purpose? That's when the paranoia really began to set in. Every car behind me looked suspicious. Every pair of headlights in my rearview mirror held menace. I took 4 different turns to shake anyone who might have been following me. Drove in circles through familiar streets. Even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I finally pulled into an old gas station on the edge of town to breathe, to collect myself. That's when I noticed it. On the passenger seat of my locked car, sitting neatly on top of my glove compartment, was another envelope. I hadn't seen anyone approach. I hadn't stopped anywhere long enough for someone to plan it without being noticed. My doors had been locked. And yet there it was. My name on the outside this time. Not just you. Not a threat. Not vague. Just James. I opened it slowly, my fingers trembling. Inside was a single Polaroid. This time, it was Emily. She was in her room, in her pajamas, curled up on her bed, sleeping. The picture had been taken from inside the house. That's when the full weight of it hit me. This wasn't just about Lauren anymore. It wasn't just about the red house or Celia's grave or the strange man in gray. Someone had been inside my home, watching my daughter. While I was out searching for answers, they were stepping deeper into my life. They were showing me just how close they'd already gotten. I raced home, my heart pounding so hard I could barely think. I blew through 2 red lights and nearly sideswiped a truck. I wasn't thinking straight, I couldn't. When I got to the house, everything looked the same. Nothing broken. No signs of forced entry. Lauren was in the kitchen, washing dishes like it was just another night. I stormed upstairs and found Emily sound asleep, just as the photo had shown. Same position, same blanket, same room. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the hallway outside her room with a baseball bat, and every light in the house turned on. I scoured every inch of the place once she was asleep. Cabinets, closets, crawl spaces. Nothing. No cameras. No broken locks. No hidden devices. It was as if the photo had been meant to show me one thing. They could get in whenever they wanted. And there was nothing I could do to stop them. The next morning, Emily said something that nearly broke me at breakfast. She looked up from her cereal and asked, "Daddy, why were you in my room last night?" I froze. I hadn't gone in, just sat outside the door. I asked her what she meant. She frowned and said, "You were standing by the closet. I saw you. But your eyes were different." That's when I knew. That wasn't me. Someone had been in that room. Someone who looked like me. Or worse, someone she thought was me. I knew I had to get Emily out of the house, but I couldn't leave without figuring out what was really going on. So I sent her to stay with my aunt across town, just a weekend visit, nothing suspicious. I told Lauren it was for a school project. She didn't question it. She just nodded like she'd expected it. That night, the house felt darker than usual, the air thicker. I slept with the bat again, but in my bedroom this time, the door locked from the inside. At 2:11 a.m., I woke up to a noise. Not loud, just a soft, steady scratching sound. Coming from inside the closet, I sat up, heart in my throat, every inch of my skin crawling with a primal terror I couldn't explain. I walked to the closet slowly, hand gripping the bat, so tight it felt fused to my palm. The scratching continued, delicate, rhythmic, like fingernails dragging across wood. I yanked open the door and found nothing. No animal. No person. Just the same dusty pile of boxes and winter coats. But the back panel of the closet was cracked open. A panel I'd never seen before. Behind it, just darkness. A crawl space I didn't know existed. And the smell that came out of it wasn't dust or mildew or wood. It was something else. Something old. Something dead. I didn't go in. Not yet. Because before I could move, before I could even think, I heard a voice behind me whisper, clear as day, almost loving. "She knows you're getting closer." And when I turned around, the room was empty. No one there. Not Lauren. Not Emily. Just me. And the bat. And that open hole in the wall. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I couldn't. I sat at the edge of the bed with the closet door wide open, staring at that hidden panel like it might breathe. My thoughts churned, wild and incoherent, memories blending with fears, doubts bleeding into every corner of my mind. That voice, it wasn't just heard. It was felt, like it had crawled into my ear and settled under my skin. And yet, when the morning light finally filtered through the curtains, the house looked the same. The same walls, the same hallway, the same faint hum from the fridge in the kitchen. But something had changed. I knew I was done pretending this could be explained rationally. I'd crossed some threshold the moment I opened that panel. I just didn't know into what. I called my aunt first thing to make sure Emily was safe. She said everything was fine, that Emily had slept peacefully, ate pancakes for breakfast, and even laughed during cartoon. I almost broke down right there on the phone. But then she said something that made my blood turn cold. She asked if I'd left a note in Emily's backpack, something about the night talk. I had no idea what she meant. She told me Emily had handed her a folded sheet of notebook paper with her name on it. Inside, a single sentence. Asterisk, ask Aunt Carol what she remembers about the night I came home wet. Asterisk, I felt the room spin around me.
Wet?
I didn't remember any night like that. I asked my aunt what she thought it meant. Her silence on the other end was long. Too long. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, hesitant. James, do you really want to know? She told me there was a night, about 3 months ago, when Emily had shown up at her doorstep unannounced. It was around midnight. She was soaked to the bone, her socks muddy, her hair stuck to her face. No backpack. No shoes. Just standing there in a soaked nightgown. Lauren had dropped her off without explanation, saying something about a temporary situation and that she'd be back by morning. But the morning came and went. Lauren never called. Never came to get her. After a full 24 hours, my aunt had called me. But I hadn't answered. I checked my phone's call history. Nothing. No missed call. No voicemail. I checked my carrier log. Still nothing. My phone had no record of any call from her that day. And yet, my aunt swore she dialed multiple times. That she'd even left a message. She said she assumed I was handling something difficult, that maybe Lauren was having an episode. But eventually Lauren did show up again. 2 days later. Picked up Emily without a word. No apology. No explanation. Just left. I had no memory of that.
None.
I didn't remember Lauren ever leaving with Emily for 2 nights. I didn't remember Emily being gone. And if Lauren had left with her, where had they gone? And why was Emily soaking wet? The cracks in my understanding of everything started to widen. I started to question my own memory, my own timeline. How many other moments had disappeared from my mind?
And why?
I went back through my phone photos, through our calendar, my email history. Something caught my eye, a doctor's appointment confirmation for Emily scheduled during that same week. But the record was marked rescheduled by patient. I didn't do that. I would have remembered. I called the office. The receptionist told me Lauren had canceled it, saying Emily wasn't feeling well. That tracked, if Emily had been gone. But where had they really been? And why did Emily remember that night, but I didn't? That same afternoon, I finally decided to open the crawl space. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and slid inside. The space was narrow, the wood creaked beneath me, and the air was thick with dust and something else, something foul, like mildew mixed with iron. I crawled about 6 feet before I found what looked like a small chest, wooden, painted black, with iron clasps rusted shut. It took me several minutes to pry it open. Inside were old photographs, black and white, faded. They weren't of us. They were of strangers. Dozens of children, some smiling, some blurry. On the back of each photo was a name and a single date, all decades old. But at the bottom of the pile, one photo stopped me cold. It was Lauren. Not now. Not recent. Young. Maybe 13 or 14 years old. Standing in front of the same red house. Same porch. Same door. The date on the back, October 1997. I felt my lungs tighten. That meant she'd been there before. Not just recently. Asterisk long before asterisk she ever met me. The red house wasn't something she discovered. It was something from her past. Something that had followed her into this life. Into our life. And she had never told me. I crawled out, shaken, clutching the photo like it might explode if I dropped it. And then, just as I stepped into the hallway, Lauren was standing there. She didn't look angry. She didn't look surprised. She looked relieved. I wondered when you'd find it, she said. And that's when the final twist dropped like a blade through everything I thought I understood. Lauren told me I'd been there too. She said I'd been to the red house before. That I'd stood in that crawl space, not just days ago, but years ago. That we'd made an agreement. A promise to keep something sealed. To bury it. Together. She said I'd asked her to make me forget. That I'd begged her to help me forget what we saw. What we did. and that she'd honored it for as long as she could. But something had changed. Something had awakened. And now, Emily was starting to remember too. That's why Lauren had lied. That's why she had hidden everything. Not to protect herself, but to protect me. Because I had been part of it all along. Only now / I had no memory of it. And whatever we buried, whatever we thought we'd locked away, it wasn't staying buried anymore. The days that followed Lauren's confession were the kind that split time in two. Before I knew the truth, and after. She sat across from me in the living room, calm, composed, almost eerily serene as she recounted the pieces of a history I'd unknowingly shared. Her voice was steady, even when the things she said shook me to my core. She said we'd gone to the Red House together nearly 7 years ago, before Emily was born, back when we were still trying to conceive and had exhausted every medical option. It wasn't a house, she told me. It was a place, a doorway. A place people came to when they wanted something too badly to walk away. She said I was the one who found it, hidden in a string of online forums, buried between folklore threads and missing persons reports. You were the one who said we had nothing left to lose, she whispered, like that made it better. Like dragging me into the abyss with her made her hands cleaner. I didn't want to believe her. I tried not to, but somewhere inside, the cracks in my own memory, the missing days, the moments I couldn't explain, the photo of Lauren as a teenager standing on that porch, all of it began to take on a new shape, like a puzzle that had always been missing its center. And now, suddenly, I could see the image forming. The Red House hadn't returned. It had never left. Lauren said we left the house that night with a promise. A child would come. But there was a cost. Always a cost. One of us had to forget. One of us had to carry it. She said I asked her to protect me from the truth. She agreed. But now, Emily was remembering. And so was I. It all came to a head 3 nights later. Emily had been sleepwalking. The second time in a week. I found her standing in the hallway at 2 a.m., eyes wide open but glassy, her lips moving in a whisper too soft to hear. She was walking toward the front door, barefoot, hand outstretched like she was being pulled. When I gently shook her, she snapped out of it with a scream so sharp it felt like it shattered the air. Lauren ran in, tried to calm her down, but Emily only stared at her and asked, "Why did you let him in again?"
That
night I knew it was over. We couldn't hide from this anymore. I had to face whatever waited at that house. I had to see it, truly see it, with no filters, no amnesia, no safety net of forgotten memories. I told Lauren I was going back, and this time I was going alone. She didn't try to stop me. She just said, "If you remember everything, don't let it speak." The Red House looked the same. Rotting wood. Cracked windows. That strange etching above the door. But this time, when I stepped inside, the air felt different. Not heavy. A live star. Like the house was breathing. Like it knew I was back. The floor groaned beneath me as I walked through the front room, the boards soft under my feet, warped from years of moisture and neglect. But the deeper I went, the clearer the past became. The layout matched the flickers in my mind, room by room, a distorted mirror of the night we made the deal. Then I reached the basement door. I hadn't remembered it before. But now, the sight of it sent a jolt of electricity up my spine. It was padlocked. But next to it, lying on the floor like it had been waiting for me, was a single rusted key. I went down. The basement was darker than night, darker than anything I'd ever known. My flashlight flickered and dimmed, like it was being smothered by the air itself. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. In the center of the room, a circle of ash. Burned symbols in the concrete floor. And in the middle of it, a mirror. Not a regular mirror. This one didn't reflect me. Instead, I saw Lauren. A younger Lauren.
crying,
Screaming. Begging. Behind her, I saw myself, eyes blackened, mouth open in a silent scream, carving symbols into the floor with my bare hands. The mirror shifted, morphed, like a living thing made of smoke and water, showing scene after scene, me dragging something into the woods, Lauren sealing a box, Emily in a crib surrounded by shadowed figures whispering in tongues. None of it made sense, but all of it felt real, like memories locked behind a door I never wanted to open. Then the whispering started. At first, I couldn't make out the words, just a low, guttural hum that vibrated through the walls. But then, slowly, they formed sentences. Asterisk, you brought her here. You offered. You asked. You forgot. Asterisk, the voice was mine. But older. Twisted. Like someone had stretched it across dimensions. And then I saw it. In the reflection just over my shoulder. The man in the gray coat. Only it wasn't a man. It had no face. No eyes. Just smooth, slick skin where features should be. And when it opened its mouth, I saw my daughter's drawing come to life. The black figure. The voice. The promise. I turned around, swinging the flashlight like a weapon, but there was nothing there. Just the ash circle and the mirror. But the whispering didn't stop. It grew louder, faster, urgent. Asterisk, bring her back. Or, we will take her properly. Asterisk. I ran. Out of the basement. Out of the house, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. I drove home like my life depended on it. Because now I knew it wasn't about Lauren. It wasn't even about what we'd done. It was about Emily. She wasn't just the result of our desperate plea. She was the vessel for something far older, far darker than either of us understood. And now they were coming to collect. When I burst through the door, the house was silent. Too silent. I ran upstairs to her room. Empty. The window wide open. A breeze blowing in. And on her pillow, a single black feather. No note. No sound. No daughter. But taped to the mirror above her dresser. A photo. Of me. Standing outside the red house. Smiling. For 3 days, I didn't leave the house. I shut every curtain, locked every door, powered down my phone, and sat in the darkness waiting for a sign, any sign, that Emily might come back. I searched every inch of the property, every crawl space, every piece of attic insulation. I dug through every photograph, replayed every piece of security footage, traced every shadow. Nothing. It was as if she had vanished from the world, clean and sudden, without a struggle. The black feather stayed where it had been found, and the photo, me smiling outside the red house, sat pinned above her mirror like a mocking signature. I wasn't smiling in that photo. I never had been. Not there. Not ever. But the man in the picture looked just like me. Same clothes. Same posture. Same eyes. Only colder. Like something else was wearing my face, pretending to be something I had once been. Eventually, I broke. Not in the way people picture breakdowns, with screaming and pacing and hands pulling at hair. Mine was quieter. I stood in her room, inhaled the faint scent of her lavender shampoo, and accepted the truth Lauren had tried to hide and I had tried to forget. Emily was never fully ours. We had crossed a line years ago, at that cursed house, and we hadn't understood the rules. We had made a request that should never have been granted. When she came into our lives, beautiful, perfect, impossibly calm, there had been signs. Dreams that Lauren claimed were just hormonal. Nights when the crib would rattle softly. Times when Emily would point to corners of the room and smile at nothing. Things a baby shouldn't do. Things we explained away because we were too desperate to believe we hadn't simply been blessed. But blessings don't come with conditions carved in ash. And children don't just walk out of windows into thin air. Unless they were never entirely here to begin with. I finally asked Lauren what had happened during those missing days, the ones I had blocked out entirely. She hesitated, her hands trembling as she poured herself a glass of water, though she never took a sip. She said the red house had given us an answer. That there had been a ritual, something ancient and older than words. That we had agreed to terms without knowing the full price. She said I had been the one to speak the words that sealed the pact, and in doing so, part of me had been left behind. She said the man in the gray coat was not a man at all, but a watcher, a collector, a remnant of whatever forces guarded that place. I wanted to hate her for keeping this from me, but deep down, I knew I had asked her to. I had begged her to help me forget. And she had. Still, I wasn't ready to give up on Emily. I returned to the red house one last time. This time, I didn't sneak. I walked through the front door like I belonged there. Because in some twisted way, I did. The basement was waiting for me. The symbols on the floor had deepened, burned darker into the concrete, pulsing faintly with a heat I could feel in my chest. The mirror stood upright again, but it no longer showed distorted memories. It was blank,
Silent.
until I stepped into the circle and whispered her name. The reflection rippled like water. And then there she was. Emily, not hurt, not afraid, just distant. Standing in a field I didn't recognize, her hair fluttering in a wind I couldn't feel. She looked older, maybe by a year, maybe by a second. It was impossible to tell. She raised her hand and pressed it to the mirror from the inside. I did the same. Our palms aligned. She smiled, softly, sadly. And then she whispered something I couldn't hear. The moment she did, the mirror began to crack. Fine lines like frost crept across the surface. The basement grew colder, the whispering returned, the symbols flared red. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just watched as she mouthed the words again, and again, until I finally understood. Asterisk, it's okay to let go. Asterisk. I woke up outside the house, covered in ash, the basement gone, collapsed inward as if it had never existed. The land behind the house was scorched. Blackened trees, silent birds, no wind. The red house itself had burned to its frame sometime during the night, though I hadn't lit a single flame. It was over. I knew it in my bones. Whatever had been waiting in that place had taken what it came for, or had been given what it was owed. I don't know which. Lauren and I separated quietly after that. There were no accusations, no fights. Just a mutual, aching understanding that some cracks are too deep to repair. She moved to a small town up north. I stayed behind. I see Emily sometimes, in dreams, in crowds, in the corner of a mirror I catch too quickly to be sure. I think she's safe, wherever she is. I think whatever we unleashed wasn't meant to punish her. She was always the innocent one, the vessel, the offering, the echo of something both terrible and beautiful. A reminder that some doors, once opened, never truly close. People ask me sometimes, do I believe in the supernatural? In curses? In haunted places? I always answer the same way. I believe in consequences. And the things we beg for when we think no one is listening. Because someone always is.